So this is kind of like a fun experience for me. I've been graduated for a little while, and a friend of a friend mentioned that you guys were offering this lecture series, and you guys might be interested in having me here. So I go through all of these ideas in my mind. I obviously graduated from UVU, and I feel kind of like I'm a traitor or an infidel, right? Like I've infiltrated the layer of BYU, and you guys are going to be, studying me under a microscope. But I've had a fun story, and I'd love to share that with you today. It's kind of an interesting teaching environment. I taught in the MTC for 2 years, and I loved it after my mission. It's one of those places where you can go and you can actually teach with the Spirit and have a really meaningful environment. And I feel like you guys got to benefit from that while being here at BYU. So to kind of echo in those same sentiments, I hope that what I can say will have the Spirit with it so that it'll impact you in a way that will help you along your career path. So with that in mind, how many of you guys in here honestly think you're going to start a business when you graduate? You can raise your hands. Wow, there's a good number of you. So almost half. So you've gone through that process. You've grinded through your mind. The other half, what are you guys going to do? Join the Forest Service, be a ski instructor? I mean, what's your goal path? Anyone? Broadway. All right, I could get behind that. Med school. That's a good one. Any other someone's going to say Walmart, right? Someone's got to admit it. I'm going to go to work at Walmart, make some bank. Just do it right. So the focus of what I want to talk about a couple of things and kind of the path that brought me to where I am to this day. Because when I was in high school, I have this really kind of gregarious, I'm just like fun-loving, kind of easygoing in the moment personality. If you would have met me 10 years ago, I had hair probably down to the middle of my shoulders. I had this big, thick, rugged beard, and I rock climbed probably 3 or 4 times a week. Hence, I studied philosophy. So when I got back from my mission, I would come to classes like this and think, no way am I going to sit in front of a computer for the rest of my life. That's for somebody else, right? Like bean counters and accountants, and I don't want to do any of that. So I was really involved in kind of outdoor activities and loved philosophy because it challenged the way that I thought. It said, why do you believe the things that you do, and support them? And part of it as well is because I'm good at BS. So I could not study for a test, show up, and BS my way through it, where if you show up and you've got to take a biology exam or accounting or economics, you can't BS your way through it. So I graduated UVU, I'm going to be honest, just doing probably the bare minimum. But I know myself and who I am, and when I'm engaged in something, I go all the way. So I graduated in 2005 from Utah Valley University with a degree in philosophy, and I got to that point in my life where all of a sudden I was at a crossroads. I'm like, okay, I can't be in college anymore. I have to show up every day, and I have to give it all I've got. So a natural transition was to start working with my brother. And I want to highlight kind of the things that I learned working for my brother and the experiences and how that helped me launch my own business. My brother Brandon is a lot like me, but he's much, much more driven. We both did door-to-door sales, and I would go and work during the summer. But Brandon, my brother, he would show up and he would be the top rep every year. I mean, 500-600 accounts. He just was that guy. When he graduated from college, he started a company called Atlas Marketing Group. Has anybody even heard of Atlas Marketing? So they did direct sales for Dish Network, and they killed it. So in the first 5 years, here's some stats about what they did. And this was just through brute force, through my brother just pushing. So in 5 years, they did $84 million total revenue. They were an Inc. 500 company in their 3rd year of business. They had 1,200 total employees by their 5th year of business. They had 40 offices, and they pioneered many numerous sales techniques that are mimicked throughout the sales industry today. So anybody in here that's going to start a business next year, who would raise your hand and say, I want to own that business? Anybody, right? Hopefully everyone that said, I'm going to start a business when I graduate, raised their hands, because that's a phenomenal business. That whole model, that idea of going out and building that type of success on the door-to-door industry is phenomenal. But there were some key mistakes that my brother made while he was in business. One of the things that I've learned as I've gone through this process is entrepreneurs, when they get into the business industry, they think that everything they touch is going to turn to gold. So they struck it big. All of the stars came in alignment. They worked really hard. They brought in the right sales managers. They built all of these techniques. But do you know what happened in his 5th year of business? Anybody guess? They actually went out of business. So they had this fascinating company that had this amazing trajectory. All of the principles, and his business partner went through the entrepreneurship school here at BYU. They had set everything up the way that they thought they would, but what was the difference? What caused that catalyst? And a lot of the reason that they went out of business was they lost sight of what their key goal was when they started their company. So I came on. Let's kind of rewind. In 2005, I graduate. I start working with my brother Brandon, and he started a communications company called Nuvant Communications, where they actually paired up with iProvo and iFiber. So we were talking about that before, but same type of business model, direct marketing. But what happened was, again, they were so diversified that they forgot to take care of this golden goose. And they had debt leveraged themselves into a very bad position. So in 2008, when the market kind of slipped, they lost a lot of their sales, and it was the straw that broke the camel's back. On a spiritual note, they got kind of involved in the materialism of having this company that was just blowing up. So I saw all of that kind of from the sidelines. I was working in Nuvant. I had a very frank discussion with my brother one day where I walked in and said, we've gone from 0 to 80 employees. We're back down to maybe 30 employees. And you're never going to be able to fire me, so I'm gonna quit. So he said, great. So then I went out and started working for Tafiti Consulting, and they did kind of the same, this idea of website design, SEO, marketing, online marketing, and I kind of started to figure it out. I learned I really kind of had a knack for it. So I worked for Tafiti for several years. Tafiti made kind of some key mistakes as well. They experienced the same kind of rapid trajectory growth. We went from, when they hired me, there were 6 employees. They hired me on for the same purpose. They wanted me to help build out their customer service department, their tech management, their billing, all of these things. And for me at that point, I'm like, this is easy. I can do this. I've got this in the bag. So Tafiti Consulting kind of ramps up, and we were doing in gross revenue over $100,000 a week. So in a given month, we were banking about $500,000. And the profit margin in that business was really great. So we had 4 business partners, and we thought everything was exactly what we would want it to be. We were positioned again uniquely to kind of take off in the marketplace and have this phenomenal business. Well, the 2 business partners were brothers, and then 2 were outside investors. And the brothers were kind of active in the company, and the 2 that were operating, they fought over money. They got kind of greedy. They got caught up in the materialism again. This idea of, well, I'm the one that's putting in all the effort. Why are they getting anything out of this? So that company kind of blew up. And I was left in that same position. I'm like, I'm graduated. I've worked at 2 jobs post-graduation. What's my next step? Well, I got recruited by another company, Ridgecrest Consulting, that was similar to Tafiti. But that's when I had the idea. I'm like, okay, I want to maybe start a business. And I'm not like you guys. I didn't have that kind of training, right? I just had brute confidence in my ability to go out and, strike it on my own. So I started Tafiti Consulting. I did some website design on the side, kind of followed up that whole process of online market, online business, how to make it succeed. And through that process, kind of stumbled into MyFastPC. And this is all now over the course of about, 2005 to 2012, realistically when I started MyFastPC, about 8 years. And so there are a couple of key principles that I want to talk to you guys about today that will affect your life right now, the next month, the next year, and throughout your entire life. And one of those core principles that I have, if I can say it, I have a firm testimony in is that by small and simple things, great things are brought to pass. It's Alma 37:7. It's that principle that by small and simple things, great things are brought to pass. So when I graduated in 2005, I had no idea that I would be where I am, none. But I took all of the steps necessary to kind of position myself to build MyFastPC into what it is. And I still kind of look at entrepreneurs. I joke around with Cameron about this. I look at entrepreneurs who have these ideas and these great ambitions, and I think, how do they do that, you know? Like, how does someone just see the opportunity in the market and then make it happen and execute? And I really believe it's because of that principle and the vision, and I don't necessarily include myself in that company, but at the end of the day, it really does boil down to that process. So let's fast forward just a little bit. We have MyFastPC, which we started in 2015, basically, or 2012. So out of all of these businesses, I was patiently waiting for that opportunity. And I didn't know that I was going to start a business. When Tafiti went out, when those 4 business partners kind of separated, I thought to myself, maybe this is a good point to strike out and do it on my own. You know, maybe I go out because I was intimately familiar with that business model. I knew how to make it work because I was so involved in kind of the brass tacks of every day making it work. But I kind of waited and let that opportunity pass. So then 4 years go by, I'm working in Tilo Solutions, doing my web design company. And the idea came by a friend of mine who was working for a company, one of my competitors. He just told me kind of about the process behind what they do. And I just thought, all right, so what would any good entrepreneur do in that scenario, right? You probably start building out projection sheets. And we built out massive spreadsheets, like 8 to 10 page spreadsheets about, okay, what do we need to do as far as a cost analysis? How much money am I going to have to put up? How many sales am I going to have to generate? What products and services am I going to be able to offer to make this fly? And for about a month, you know, I did all of this math and just kind of cranked the numbers. Am I going to make this work? And I remember the day, it was one of the most terrifying days of my life, but one of the most liberating, right? I go into my Ridgecrest Consulting, and I sit down with the owners, because I'd been kind of working on the side. And I just said, hey guys, I love you, but I'm going to quit. I'm going to jump out on my own, and I'm going to do this. And I had a modest savings account. And I remember going home that night and laying on my bed and thinking, okay, what are all of my bills? And I'd done this mental exercise 100 times. Okay, what do I have to pay? What do I have to do? And I just thought, I've made the worst decision of my life, right? Like, I was sick to my stomach because I had this great job and a career path where I was moving in what I felt was the right direction. And now all of a sudden, I have nothing. I have no employees. I have no guaranteed income. I have bills. And I have a bank account that's about this tall. And every day, it's going to start whittling away until I make something happen. And I didn't sleep at all. It's probably the start of me losing my hair, right? Like, I'm laying in bed, and I probably woke up that day with like 25 less hairs. So then I go out, and I did what any other good business owner would do. I was like, all right, we got to find a space. And it was like this switch went off. It went from this utter terror of, holy cow, what am I going to do, to this confidence of, I'm now moving in the right direction. So I went out and started looking for office space, something as simple as office space. I called Fred Johnson. He owns office condos right up here off University Parkway. I called him up, said, hey, you've got this office condo for rent. Can I lease it? I worked out a short-term lease, a 6-month lease, $900 a month. I had no employees. I had an office space. I go out and buy some computers. The bank account goes down a little more, right? I put $1,000 security deposit. That bank account goes down a little more. And I'm like, all right, what do I need to do? All right, I'll start my business. I'll get my business license. I'll put an ad out in KSL. I'll build my website. At that point, I hadn't even built my website. So I'm currently unemployed. I have this great idea in my mind that I know is just going to work. And I even remember sitting down with some of my friends, John Bankhead in particular, super pessimistic. He sits down with me, and I tell him what I'm doing, and he's like, so how do you know it's going to work? And I'm like, it just will work. He's like, well, how do you know? I'm like, well, I've done numbers. Well, how do you know it's going to work? Well, I don't know. I hope it works. So I got some computers. I remember calling one of my best friends, Greg Nybo is his name. We both grew up in Orem together. We actually served on our missions together. When we got back, we both taught in the MTC together. After we graduated, we both worked at Nuvant together. then he stayed on with Broadweave as their network operations manager out at Traverse Mountain, and I called him up. I'm like, Greg, I'm going to start this business. I have this great idea. I think I can make it work. He's like, well, yeah, let's go talk. So we sit down, and I'm like, at JCW's, right at the point of the mountain. I'm like, Turbo, do you love your job? You want to know what he said? No, I hate it. I was like, well, I'm starting this business. Do you want to come work with me? And in his mind, he's like, yeah, but I'm going to go get a master's in public administration from BYU in the fall. And in my mind, I'm thinking, no, you're not. Because as soon as you come and work with me, you're going to realize you're not going to want to go back to school to only graduate to then try to find a job again like what I can provide for you. So he said, great, I'll work with you on a limited basis. So I had a tech, someone that I knew could help me on the tech side with remote desktop support. And I have a sales background. And I also have a background in building departments and strategic growth. So then I start selling. I get on the phone and I start working. And we got right down to it. I'm not going to lie. There was a month where I was thinking, all right, I can sell my Harley Davidson. I'd probably get $6,000 for that because I had that little amount of money in my bank account. I can probably sell my Harley Davidson. I can probably talk to my mom. Maybe she'll help me out with rent for a month. I mean, we're going to get it. But at the end of the day, it was that brute confidence and that knowing that I had the opportunity and that I had to strike. And so it's that testimony that I have. All of those days where I would go to bed and just not be able to sleep, I would wake up the next morning and go out and do and focus on doing those small and simple things, right? Like the first day, what's your next step? I'm going to put one step right in front of the other. I'm going to go out and get an office space. And as soon as I've got that, I'm going to put an ad in the newspaper and hire an employee, which is scary. I mean, again, when you don't have income and you're asking people to quit their jobs or come work for you, that's scary. And then you take that next step and you get your business set up. You form it, do your LLC, whatever you want to do. You take those next steps, and that's the only way you can combat that kind of fear that you get in your gut when you're stepping over that abyss and you have no idea what's in front of you other than this dream, this entrepreneur's kind of optimism that it'll work. So Greg at that time was still working. He was doing remote support for Veracity Communications at their network operations center. And I remember we got to that point where we had about 10 employees. And it was that time where I'm like, Greg, you need to come over full time. And remember, this is one of my best friends. I know his wife, Andrea. We taught her in the MTC. That's kind of goofy for those of you guys that know about it. It's like, that's kind of a rule you don't break, right? But she came back off her mission and they got married. They have 2 kids. And I remember talking to him. I'm like, we need to have you come over full time. And now there's one more weight that I'm thinking, okay, I'm not only obligating myself, now one of my good friends and his wife, I have to be accountable to them. But we made it work. That next month, we did a little more revenue. We went from maybe 15,000 in sales to 30,000 in sales or 50,000 in sales. And we started pushing that envelope. And now the bank account, instead of being right down to where I'm thinking, am I going to have to hawk a kidney to make rent this month? We went to this point where I'm like, okay, we've got a little money in the bank. And this is the other thing that I've found as you own a business. And it's probably a true principle in life, is you have to enjoy the little moments as you go. Because I would always set these goals. That's how I work. I would set this goal. I would say, okay, when we have $15,000 in our bank account, then I'll sleep good at night, right? Then I can sleep well. And then we'd hit 15,000 in the bank, and I'd be like, okay, as soon as we get 50,000 in the bank, then I'm going to sleep good at night. And then for a long time, I said, you know, once we have $100,000 in our bank account, then I'm going to be okay. Once we have 100,000, we'll be good. And then it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And in our first year, our first calendar year of doing business, we did $1.3 million in sales. Now, I talked to Cameron and a bunch of people, and I'm not good about bragging about my business, but 1.3 million, I'm like stoked on. Just the fact that in the time that we started selling from April 19th till December, so not even a calendar year, we did 1.3 million in revenue. We had this awesome model. We went from 0 to 30 employees. Everything was just like firing on all cylinders. We just had it right. And I felt like I had taken all of the things that I had learned in every one of those businesses that I'd been a part of since I had graduated and applied them specifically to the opportunity that was in front of me. And I was just, we were hammering it. And I looked at where we were and I thought, you know, we could settle at this. we could have, I mean, our profit margins are great in my business model. I'm not going to lie to you. I love it. And I could stay at that 30, 40 employee model and just make it hum like a sewing machine. But there's this ambitious side of me that just says, no, work while you can. There's an opportunity that you have. And my business, I guess my business maturity has changed as I've been doing this. This next year I thought, okay, well, let's, instead of doing 1.3 million, let's see if we can't shoot to double that. Let's see if we can't do 2.5 million. So then I set about, same processes that you go through, hiring people, bringing more employees in, bringing in managers, and instead of doing $2.4 million, we did in excess of $6 million in our second year in total revenue. So we went from, I mean, I tried to figure this out again. I'm not a business major, but our growth model was basically 0 to 1.3 in the first year, and then from 1.3 to just over 6 million in our second year. That's like 600% growth in the first year, right? I mean, if my math is correct. But at every stage of operating business, there have been unique challenges in every aspect where I go home at the end of the day and I can't shut that off. Like I just think, okay, well, how are we going to solve these problems? What are things that I need to be focused on? I mean, you can do those strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, right? Your SWOT analysis, and you're always trying to figure out how to grow and push that growth model. So where we're at right now, we've got a really great partnership with Clark Capital Partners. It's a private equity firm that found out about our business kind of through word of mouth. One of my roommates is actually working with them, and he's like, dude, we've got to connect the dots. And Clark Capital Partners, the owner of that company, his name's James Clark, and he started ClearLink. So when he found out about MyFastPC, he came on and just said, what do I need to do? Let's take MyFastPC, which is this good company that's got a really great growth model, and let's make it something great. And that's where we are today. We're about 2.5 years in our business. We're going to sign a deal with a private equity firm and basically invest some more money into MyFastPC and see if we can't go from 100, 130 employees to hopefully 400 or 500 employees and really build that brand and that culture and really just execute and hit that business where it needs to, take that business to where it needs to go. So some of the key things that, I mean, obviously I've never been in here, so I don't know kind of how these things go, but some key points that you guys have kind of outlined are, you know, my strategies, how did I pivot. I wish that I, you know, could come in and say I have all of these great, you know, ideas like, oh, did that go off? Oh, I was maybe covering it. You know, like you watch TED Talks, and there's some really awesome TED Talk, but at the end of the day, the biggest lessons that I've learned in business, there are several things, but one is, simply put, by small and simple things, great things come to pass. I can't overemphasize that enough. And that was something that was instilled on me even back on my mission. How many of you guys have seen that picture of the horse that's blind, that's working in a mine? Have you guys seen that one? It's like from the turn of the century, like maybe 1902 or 1903. So on my mission president, I have amazing respect for him. He's this tremendous man. He had this picture over his desk, this big picture, if you can imagine, just this workhorse, right? And you can see it just straining against this yoke. And it's got this heavy, heavy load behind it. And it's just digging and working and pushing. And I remember going in and having interviews with him and chatting with our mission president and just always being impressed by that. And going out and talking to our missionaries and saying the same thing. In life, you can look at life in a lot of different ways, right? That horse is doing everything that it can in its power. And it worked so hard and spent its entire life in the mine shafts that it went blind. But every day, it dug and it did its job. And it may not have seen the end goal. And if there's something that I can impart with you guys is enjoy where you're at right now and look at the plan that you have. I mean, I look at the kids that are coming out these days and that we hire into our business, and I think a lot of times we want it now and we want it so immediately. We want it fast, right? Like we sit in class and if we get bored, we pull out our phones and we start texting our friends, or we pull up our Instagram feeds, or, you know, we have all of this access to mass media. And then in the inverse, we have this amazing idea that I want to start a business. I want to have that opportunity right from the get-go. And that may not materialize for you like it did for me. I'm saying it didn't happen immediately. It may take 5 or 10 years for you to realize what your opportunities are. But one thing that my mission president said, it's actually my brother's mission president, but he told Brandon, because Brandon always knew he was going to be an entrepreneur. This is my brother that started Atlas. He said, if you want to be a businessman, go and work in that industry for 5 years and gain that industry experience so that you know it in and out. And then once you've worked there for 5 years, then go out and start your business. Because all of the lessons that you'll learn, you'll have that broad experience. And so if there's some wisdom that I can give to you guys is, as you graduate, make the right decisions to build your resume, and don't be impatient with the process. There are some people that get it, that they have those ideas, those entrepreneurs that just, whatever those may be, they can hit and they go. But then there are other people who approach it from a different perspective, like me, who love to rock climb and want to have fun in life. And then when you graduate, you think, okay, what are my next steps? I'm going to take a job working in this career, and it turns out I'm actually pretty good at it. And then when this opportunity closes, I get recruited by another company, and I'm still working down that same career path, and I'm growing my skill sets. And then that opportunity closes, and another door opens. And again, by those small and simple things and that sheer determination to work and pull that yoke like that workhorse, you reach those goals. And when those opportunities come along, you are absolutely positioned with the talents and the skill sets and the clarity of vision to know how to execute when they happen. Right? The other thing that I want to talk about is how you paint yourself in your life. And I'm going to use another example from the scriptures. Because you can either paint yourself as the hero or the victim in whatever your story is, right? And I'm going to talk about my brother specifically, and then I'm going to talk about how this relates to me, and hopefully it's personally applicable, right? We've all heard these stories about Nephi and Laman and Lemuel, and they all went through the exact the same set of circumstances, right? But what was the difference? I mean, you can say a lot of things. This could be an open-ended question, right? Nephi desired to be close to God. He desired to see the things that Lehi had sought. He desired to be righteous. What was the difference with Laman and Lemuel? They saw the same set of circumstances, and what was their desire? Their desire was selfishness. Their desire was whatever those may be, greed, the luxury of staying in their own home, and the land of their inheritance. So we look at this. The Lord has placed all of these challenges in front of us and said, live your life and grow. Look at the opportunities that you have and paint yourself either the victim or the hero. And as far as entrepreneurship is concerned, hopefully you paint yourself as the hero, because you can look at the same opportunities and have the same experiences, but based solely on your worldview, either they can be positive or negative, right? Like, I do watch TED Talks. I'm going to plagiarize a little bit. Have you guys seen the TED Talk where he talks about the secret of success? We always think that we want to have success because that's what's going to make us happy, right? As soon as I graduate from college, then I'll be happy. Or as LDS people, we have this tremendous pressure to get married. As soon as I'm married, then I'm going to be happy, right? Or as soon as I get this car, I'm going to be happy. Or as soon as I can just go out with this really attractive person, then I'm going to be happy because she'll, or he, I'll say she because I'm a guy, she'll see what I have to offer and then I'll be happy. But we put it backwards. We have to do the right things and look at life in the right perspective, and that's what makes us happy. And then that, in turn, unlocks success. And there are several keys. Obviously, in a church setting, the best thing that I could advise you is be close to the Spirit. Be close to God. Nurture that relationship with Him so that you can make the right decisions when they come along. And if you're taking care of those little things, those key secrets to making yourself happy, you're going to do better work, you're going to perform better, you're going to have those opportunities open to you that otherwise wouldn't be available to you because your mind is in the right place and you're in tune with the Spirit. Specifically in this TED Talk, he talks about 5 things, and I love them, and I'll recommend them to everyone for as long as I have breath in my lungs. The first thing he talks about is getting daily exercise. And I know that's kind of ludicrous to talk about. The second thing that he talks about is writing in your journal every day about something that you can be grateful for. So whatever that opportunity may be. The third thing is to reflect on that. So you want to reflect on what it is that's happened positively, and you nurture that idea of positivity in your mind. And then meditate daily. For us as LDS people, that's really easy. Just pray daily. Draw close to the Spirit. And if you do those things, then you are going to have the right perspective. Unlike Laman and Lemuel, who went through the same set of circumstances, and they had a completely different worldview because of their perspective in their life, right? And I'm going to talk about my brother. So let's rewind. Atlas Marketing, 84 million total revenue, Inc. 500 company in their first 5 years, 1,200 total employees, and in 5 years they're out of business. Part of it was because his business partner started a Ponzi scheme, and that whole real estate, you guys may not remember that. Maybe you guys are old enough. 2008, the real estate market crashed. A lot of people lost their jobs. They had started, my brother's business partner, had started this fund where he would give you 36% return on his investments. So my brother went through he just wasn't watching the goose that laid the golden egg. And he lost that opportunity. Atlas Marketing went away. So my brother filed personal bankruptcy, but he's the most amazing man that I've ever met in my life. If I could be anyone in my life or emulate anyone next to Christ, it would be my brother Brandon. Because walking through that fire of having that type of success to then having nothing, he did everything right. He relied on the Spirit. He maintained his relationship with God. He wrote notes and carries personal letters for all of the debt that he had assumed inside his business, and over the last 6 years has been paying off that debt. He had over $1 million in personal debt. But what did he do? When all of the world just combined against him, he stood up and said, I'm still going to push forward, like that workhorse. And he worked, and he started another business, Nuvant, and Nuvant didn't do great. And he sold it off, and he started another business called Sage Pest Control. And Sage Pest Control has slowly done better and better and better and better. And it's now at a point where they have 2 branches. They're going to do roughly $2.5 million in revenue this year. He's got a software company that he started as a part of that. And that software company is very uniquely positioned in the pest control market to offer a CRM solution to companies out there. And software, if any of you guys have looked at business models, and I can steer you on the last day of class, get into software, because that crap looks easy. No, really. So he's got this opportunity. I can talk about that after, but he's got this opportunity with the software company where within 5 years, he's hoping to generate a lot of money. And he's going to walk up to every person that he owed money to and write them a personal check and pay them off for the debt that he owed them. And he has carried himself through life in the way that everyone should carry themselves. Whether you have success or whether you have failure, if you maintain that relationship with God and you maintain that closeness with Him and that perspective, and you work hard and you take care of the small and simple things, the great things will take care of themselves. I 100% have a testimony of that. Again, I wish I could speak more to some awesome point about having earned or garnered my own business knowledge, but I don't think that I have. I think I'm just a guy who's saw an opportunity and I took a chance and I've worked really hard, and I don't think I have some of the talents that other people may have, but the thing that I do possess is my willingness to work hard, is to show up every day, and I'll say that to you guys as well. 9 times out of 10, hard work beats talent. So if you have a goal and you have an idea, stick with it. I'll finish with my final story is, how many of you guys have heard of Rustico? Do you guys know? You may not have heard of it, but I'm sure you've seen them. They're the leather-bound Book of Mormons and journals. They're kind of all over. They're really cool. So one of my friends, probably about 12 years ago, back in my hippie days, wanted a leather-bound journal. He's like, this would be rad, right? But he couldn't find one that he liked. So he goes out, like the hippie he is, and carves out his own leather sheet, binds it to a Book of Mormon, or binds it to a journal, and makes his own journal. And enough people start seeing it, they're like, wow, that's really cool. Would you do that for me? And he's like, yeah, buy me the materials and I'll hook it up for you. So then his his roommate, who was an econ major at the time, approaches him and says, well, you could probably make some money doing this. And he's a hippie, right? He doesn't care. He's like, nah, whatever. So his roommate's like, no, seriously, we could make some good money doing this. So he goes, all right, let's look into it. So they kind of do it on the side. They start this business, Rustico. And they have, because his roommate is in the entrepreneur school, or entrepreneurship school, they submitted as a business model to one of their teachers, and I forget his name, but he's still here. It would be ironic if it was the professor that introduced me today, but they take it to him, and the business model required American manufacturing. And you want to know what their professor said? He said, no way. He's like, no way can you make a business succeed in America today with American manufacturing. It's like, walk away, go do something different. And you know what that did to my hippie friend? That got his ire. He said, I'm going to prove you wrong. And he did. He quit school, dropped out of school, and went out and started Rustico. And I'm going to get my numbers mixed up, but I want to say about 7 years after they started Rustico, he exited Rustico with a multi-million-dollar buyout. Went up to Traverse Mountain, bought his home, paid it off, and then went, and this is the irony of the story, he goes and applies at Patagonia, because he's a hippie, right, at heart. We're all kind of there, right? As soon as you graduate, you grow your hair back, you get the beard, whatever it is that you do, you put on your holy jeans. So he goes, and Patagonia loves him. They're like, we would love to hire you. Come in and work for us. And he gets through all of the interviewing process, and then it kicks back in HR. And you want to know what the one problem was? He didn't have his degree. So here's this man who learned in 7 years way more than you can learn in a business school through hard knocks and through life and living, and Patagonia wouldn't hire him. So he's kind of like bummed out, but he's still got his eye on what Rustico's doing, and the person that bought it from him was slowly driving it into the ground. So 2 years later, he approaches this guy. It's now a depreciated asset. He says, look, I'd like to buy Rustico back. At that point, the business owner who was driving it in the ground is like, I could care less about Rustico. I just want to make it out by the skin of my teeth. So he then buys Rustico back, and we're now 3 years later, and he's rebuilt this multi-million-dollar brand simply because he works. Not because of talent, not because of anything else other than, and it's not even a great business model, but because he works. He shows up and says, day in and day out, I'm going to prove that professor wrong. They have a picture of that professor on the wall with the letter where he said, this is a bad idea, you guys failed the class or whatever it was. He has it on the wall, and it's that fire that he burns to feed that desire to make something great. So the reason, if I step back and I'm honest with myself, why did I start MyFastPC? Because I get that question a lot. And you can ask my roommates. I'm not motivated by money. Like, I didn't start MyFastPC because I thought, hey, this is a great, I mean, I would probably be, it would be not entirely true if I didn't say I wanted to do something different so that I could have a retirement, right? I want to work in an environment where I can set myself up so that I can retire. But that's not the main thrust of why I started MyFastPC. What matters to me more than anything in my life are the relationships that I have. And I looked at MyFastPC and I said, and it's indicative by the way that I started it. I called my best friend and I said, Greg, I want to work with you. Do you want to come work with me? I look at the relationships that you can develop in life as the most valuable thing in the world, 100%. That's what matters. And when I talk with my employees, that's exactly how I address them. Every single one of them, I want to know that I want them to know that I care about them, that I want to create an environment where they can succeed. I want to create an environment where we can provide a valuable service for our clients. And in the end, we can all benefit from each other. And if we make some money along the way, then that's fantastic as well. If we make some long-lasting friendships, that's more valuable. Because as we all know, the average lifespan of businesses in America is not very long. But the lifespan of good, lasting relationships can last you an entire lifetime. So I hope I've kind of hit some points that you guys want. Again, having not seen these, I don't know if I kind of addressed them the way that I would. But if there's anything that you guys take away from this, again, the principles that I would preach are don't worry about money. Don't worry about any long-term outcomes. Worry about the things that matter most in life, which are relationships, which is your relationship first and foremost to God, maintaining a closeness to the Spirit. Secondly, maintaining a relationship with those people that you work with. As you start down that path, building those relationships, if it's from a networking standpoint, whatever that may be. The third thing is mind the small things, because by small and simple things, great things are brought to pass. 100%. And then the very last thing, hard work wins. 9 times out of 10, if someone sits in my desk and is interviewing for position and they say, I'll work harder than anybody in your office, I won't ask them any other question. I will hire them on the spot, because that, more than anything, is the key to success. Dogged determination to an idea will win. Talent oftentimes quits because it's talented and it's lazy, but hard work and determination will benefit you the long-term rewards that you hope to realize in your lifespan. So I know time is up. I think at this point, do I just turn the time back over to you, Seth? Cool. Thank you so much. Yeah.